Welcome back. And today I want to talk about something a little bit more serious. Now, during our two-gun basic class, one of the shooters asked me, Dr. Park, why don't you ever shoot an indoor? And everybody expected it's going to be something like, I want my freedom to shoot the way I want, set the targets the way I want, and draw and fire the way I want, and actually move and run and shoot different distance, all that stuff. But when I gave them the real reason, they were all shocked. So as a medical doctor, I feel obligated to share this with our fellow shooters. Now, some of you might be aware of lead poisoning, but most shooters seems like they're not very aware of the lead poisoning. But if you Google search lead poisoning and indoor shooting range, it has alarming amount of information and the warning and the problems. And if you shoot regularly in indoor or even once or twice a month, you have a lead poisoning, and there is no safe amount of lead poisoning in your body that you could contain. Now, the best way to avoid lead poisoning is shooting outdoors. And yes, if you shoot in a very big facility where they have multiple shooters, multiple teams with many different ranges, and have a lot of people shooting at the same time, that will increase the risk of lead poisoning, but it's still a lot less than indoor. And this is why I like to limit my students to a certain number of shooters and shooting only one direction, because the lead poisoning comes out of the barrel and it goes down one direction. But if you're trapped in an indoor where the small particles of lead is airborne and you're inhaling everything, there is no getting away from it. Again, if you Google search lead poisoning and indoor range, there's a lot of information out there, but let's take a look at the few of them. All right, this is such a serious problem. They actually have a lot of different sites dedicated only for the lead poisoning in the indoor shooting range. And this is one of them. And you could read this on your own time later, but what this basically says is that if you shoot regularly at indoor range or even once a month or whatever, you're exposed to lead poisoning. And this also tells you that there's no safe level of lead in our body. So even a small amount can be toxic. And this also tells you that if you're shooting it from indoor, everything in indoor shooting range is contaminated with lead. So if you come home from it and you're hugging your child and giving them kisses, that could be a serious risk to children, because the children and the elders are more vulnerable, and the pregnant lady. So who is at risk? Range workers, target or hobby shooters, members of shooting team, law enforcement, family of those who use the range. So obviously, again, anybody that comes in contact with indoor shooting range is at risk. What are the sources of lead at your range? Actual lead itself is not a big problem unless you touch it or you ingest it. But the biggest problem is that small particle from your bullet becomes airborne and you inhale it, and that becomes a problem. And the biggest problem with indoor range is that because you're in a confined area with a lot of shooting and a lot of airborne lead, and there's no way you could avoid inhaling it. And you could read the rest yourself later and you'll get the idea. Now, all of the indoor shooting range have some kind of venting system, but it's really to protect the employees, not the shooters themselves. And if you use the elite indoor shooting range previously, the actual RO are not in an actual shooting range, but they're actually in the back inside the glass cage room. And even there, they're not there very often. And you could see why, because a lot of indoor shooting range employees are suing for the compensation for the lead poisoning and the impact from the noise and the blast, because indoor amplifies a lot more than outdoor. So let's look at the symptoms. Lead is dangerous and can cause brain and nerves damage, depression, dizziness, fatigue, headaches, irritability, memory loss, tremor, trouble sleeping, muscle or joint pain, high blood pressure, constipation, kidney damage, loss of appetite, stomach cramps, abnormal sperm, impotence, infertility, loss of sex drive, miscarriage, preterm labor, and stillborn. So it's a serious problem. So here's how to protect yourself and your family from lead poisoning. Now, honestly, the best way is to shoot outdoors, but as you can see, this is uploaded from New York City. And obviously in New York City, most or if not all the shooting ranges are indoor. Do not eat, drink, or smoke inside the indoor shooting range. Wash hands with soap and water. Use non-leaded bullet and primer. Now the problem here is that you could use non-leaded bullets, but there are other shooters who doesn't really care, or they're not really aware of it. Wear gloves, change out of range clothes and shoes. Now this is good advice. If you do indoor shooting range, when you get home, before you get inside your house, take everything off and dump it into the washer and just run it and go inside with a fresh set of clothes and meet your family. And also when you wash it, you have to wash the range clothes separately. And also you have to get a regular blood lead test. Now, testing for lead is not a routine, so you have to request to your doctor. Okay, now you might be asking, Dr. Park, is there any good news on this video? And there is. The level of the lead that's been compiling in your body causing the problems can be excreted through your urine and your feces. But this is a very slow process, but definitely will. In fact, some years back, when I bought my Gucci 19, I was talking with one of the guys who was working in a gun shop, and this is a place where they have a gun shop and they have indoor shooting range as well. This guy was big, muscular, young guy, and I made a compliment saying, "Man, guy like you don't need a gun to protect yourself." And then he told me he wasn't feeling so well some years back. In fact, he was suffering with a chronic fatigue where he was always tired, energy was down, and he couldn't sleep at night. So he kind of thought not being able to sleep, and that was related to feeling tired all the time. So eventually, he went to see the doctor, and on his blood test, the level of the lead was off the chart. And he told me he's a shooting instructor at an indoor range, and doctor told him, you need to be out of the range and stay away from it. So he told me he has not teach any shooting class indoor for past 2 years, and his level came down a lot, but still a little high. And he told me now he doesn't shoot in indoor at all, and he has no plan to teach indoor classes anymore. But he had a vast knowledge of guns, and he was still working the gun shop. I really don't want to scare anybody, but this is a fact. In fact, in life, anything you do has a risk of some kind of danger. And you cannot avoid it just by locking yourself in the house and sitting in the sofa watching TV all the time. In fact, there could be worse things you can do for your body. But find a way to do it safely and enjoy your life. And I always say, life is too short.